So now that we have an API layer, let's get these listings from the server. So we go to listings screen.js. First, we import our listing API. We go up to API/listings. Next, we should get rid of this hard-coded array. We don't need it anymore. So delete. Now in this component, we should declare a state variable to store the listings that we get from the server. So useState, we're going to initialize it to an empty array and call it listings. Now we should call our API the first time our component gets rendered. So we use the effect hook, we give it a function, and this should be executed only once, the first time this component is rendered. Okay. Now in this function, we're going to call listings API.getListings. This returns a promise. We can await this, but as you know, we cannot pass an async function to the effect hook. So let's implement this logic in a separate function called load listings. An async function, and here we call our API. We await the call to get the response. Now, this response object has a property called data, which contains the data we get from the server. So here we call setListings to response.data. Now here we should call load listings. So this is how we can get the data from the server. But there are two places we have to modify, otherwise our app is not going to work. Look at this image prop of the cart component. We're setting this to item.image. But the array of listings we get from the server doesn't have an image property. It has images, which is an array of objects. Every object has two properties, URL and thumbnail URL. Now in our current implementation, we know that every listing has at least one image. So we should set this to item.images_of0.url. Also, it is better to rename this prop to image URL. This makes our code more consistent. And also, when using the cart component, we know that we have to give this prop a string object, a URL. Okay. Now, let's go to the cart component. This image prop is not renamed, so we have to rename it here as well. Image URL. VS Code gave this an alias. We can get rid of the old name and just use the new name. And one last change is on this line, where we set the source of this image. So we cannot pass a string here. We should pass an object with the URI property. Okay. Save the changes. And here are the listings we get from the server.